next speaker is Sonia Bashir Kabir. And wow, what do I say about her? First of all, there is a huge time difference between us in the East Coast and Sonia Bashir Kabir, because she is calling us from Bangladesh, which is 10 hours ahead of our Eastern time. So it's what, 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. her time. I'm very grateful that she agreed to do it after hours, but you know, with the timing difference and in a global situation, I think the times kind of goes into a cycle. So I'm really grateful. A little bit about Sonia. I won't read her entire bio. It's available on our website, but she's the founder and CEO of SBK Foundation. She has worked in many different IT companies. Some of them are very well known. And also at a personal note, Sonia and I were high school friends. So we go back many, many years. And when I saw her, actually, believe it or not, she was supposed to come and do a presentation for us on March 19th. And I'm glad she didn't hop on the plane and I got to hop on the plane. So I came back. I came back from Bangladesh on March 9th, and she was supposed to get on the plane to come here on the 11th or 12th, but that never happened. But I'm glad she's at home and I got to come home. But I'm glad she also agreed to do this presentation. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what Sonia is going to share with us, but I'm sure all of you are also going to enjoy. So thank you very much. I don't want to take too much of your time, Sonia.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much. I'm pretty excited for this opportunity. So very good morning to those of you in the United States. Anybody listening from other parts of the world, good afternoon and good evening. This is a topic that is very close to my heart, inclusion of women in the fourth industrial revolution. I'm sure we all know what the fourth industrial revolution is, so I'm not going to take a lot of time explaining that. But why it is important for including women is because 50% of the world's population is women, and how we need to work together to contribute to the 4IR is what I'm going to be spending my time on. A few things that I'd like to say: that the COVID-19 pandemic has actually done a few things that will be considered helpful in the years to come from a digital transformation perspective. And when I will be talking about that, I'll give you a little bit of a flavor of the least developed countries in the world and emerging markets, where we are not as fortunate as the United States to have access to basic digital ecosystem and infrastructure. So one of the things that the digital transformation that has happened after COVID has, that we've been forced to embrace technology, which would have taken 3 years, has happened in 3 months. And I'll explain more about that. As the world changes, it expects a balanced world and no bias. And in order to have balance, we must have inclusion of women, which is, I think, a very, very important thing that we will need to talk about. And then lastly, is it a revolution or is it an evolution? Most people have thought of the fourth industrial revolution as a revolution, but you know, it is a transformation from going from manual to automated. So there's a lot of debate there, which we will cover. So the first and most important thing that I would, if there's anything you will remember from this, there's one thing I'd request you remember, and that is the 4IR gives us an opportunity to unite as human beings against automation. It's not about men versus women. It is about us versus technology. And it's not really about us losing jobs. It's not about men losing jobs. It's about humans losing jobs to automation. And there's a lot of debate that is going on that as there's more artificial intelligence work, more data coming into the machines replace the human beings, what happens to people? And when we say that people, that includes women as well. And I think the 4IR also gives us more opportunities to unite as human beings, something we haven't thought of before. It was usually men versus women, the gender gap, the divide. I think that now needs to relax and say, how do we unite and address the challenges? A point that is very important is the challenge leaving women behind or excluding women has joint risks. Women will suffer if they don't are not included, and the joint risk is not just for women, it is for humans as it is for the world. And obviously we know that if women do not achieve their full potential, the economy will be affected. The GDP growth, the contribution that is happening currently in all countries in the world is a factor of a unity between men and women. 50% of the women are, if they are not employed to their full potential, there will be a direct impact on GDP. And then we'll talk a little these are just the high levels that I want to discuss as we go more into the discussion. Before we proceed, I think there is a gender inequality question that we have, is that how many of you think that there is gender inequality in digital inclusion? It's interesting to see the yes bar. So I think that's, it's a resounding yes, right? The 90, and I think that is, I think that is true. I'm not sure if it is 91%, but it is definitely true that there is inequality. And then let me, how do I get rid of this whole question?
I think you can close the, yeah.
Who's controlling the poll? Do I control it?
Do you still see it?
Yeah, I'm still seeing the poll.
If you could click the X in the top right of the pop-up.
Yeah, I think it's on the left. Okay, sure. So just to share the results with you, that the worldwide proportion, if you look at the proportion of women using the internet in the world is 12% less than men. But the part of the world that I come from, which is called least developed countries, there are 40 plus least developed countries, the gap is over 32%. So, and connectivity is the most important part of the whole digital inclusion process. If you are not connected, if you do not have access to the internet, there's a lot of things that you will not be able to do, just starting from email, surfing the web, communicating. That today's Zoom event is happening through connectivity. So imagine a world where women, there's not only gender inequality, but women have less connectivity to men. So all the things that we could be doing, they are deprived. And that is a very basic function of inclusion. The digital divide cannot be removed unless governments work on the ecosystem, the infrastructure. There are these countries that are landlocked. They do not have access to the internet. So their access is less. So how do we reach them? These are least developed countries. And then women in those parts of the world where it is hard to reach are even more marginalized when it comes to technology. And in order to have a successful fourth industrial revolution, one of the most important things is democratizing technology, which means technology should be available to every person on the planet and empower them to do more. And if you cannot give connectivity, you cannot democratize technology. One of the very interesting things that is happening now with the Generation Z, or Generation Z as a lot of people call it, is that they are the generation that will be mobile first and mobile only, which means that they are the generation that will actually probably not own a laptop or a tablet or a desktop. Everything will be done on the mobile for them. And then with the COVID situation, the pandemic that has happened, we have seen that education has transformed. It's one of the most traditional universities when it comes to embracing technology to provide more access, but that industry has actually transformed because children were not allowed to go to school, especially in the emerging markets. We've seen that the orientation day for kindergartners or for preschoolers sitting at home with their parents and taking the orientation online. So a child who begins his life or his education or his or her education with technology will perhaps not look at any other form of delivery, but will only look at the digital access to health, to education, to payments, and other ways of doing business. So equal opportunity or equal access to digital infrastructure is a very important part of allowing women to come in, right? So if we don't have the infrastructure, then it is difficult for men, but it is more difficult for women because we know that the men usually are the hunters and women are the farmers, a phrase that we use a lot, but in order to change that, access has to be given, which means electricity, internet, and digital ID. As the world moves more and more into a transformational stage, everything will be digital, even the identity. A lot of you probably are used to that in the United States, but as you look at other parts of the world, we still do not have a good idea of what is the population in that country, or a good idea of what is the age group, the gender, the diseases. So these things will all happen through the digital ID. The other important thing of an inclusion is a financial inclusion. We have 60 or 50 to 60% of the people who are unbanked or underbanked. Access to money or access to finance is a very important part of being part of an inclusive digital transformation or the fourth industrial revolution. So one of the things that is important as the Generation Z or the mobile first, mobile only generation, the 4 billion of the population that will be in this category, is to close the digital divide. And in order to close the digital divide, we say the inclusive recovery for women is providing equal access to digital infrastructure and financial and digital inclusion. We talked about financial inclusion, which is access to money and access to finances, access to banking, but the digital inclusion is also important. We have seen that women, academia does not really focus on technologies, the traditional subjects like math, physics, and chemistry, but to have a digital literacy training incorporated in academia, where women feel that they understand what it is to be digitally literate and they are not averse. We see that in a lot of the societies, women are actually averse to technology. It is just because of fear. They're not used to being looking at apps or opening their computer and surfing different things. So that digital literacy or digital inclusion is a very important part for the inclusive recovery. The other point that I'd like to mention here is leveraging technology. Technology is an enabler. Most people get scared when they hear of the term technology. Technology is not rocket science. We're not asking you to make Tesla cars of Elon Musk, right? Technology is just an enabler. You learn to leverage it to do what you want to do. So for an example, a farmer can continue doing his farming, but he can leverage technology to collect a lot of the data about the weather, the condition of the soil, the plant, how much water does it need. So these are things that we're trying to say when you democratize technology and you want to be embracing fourth industrial revolution, you need to have the ability to leverage technology. So born to be digital is the Generation Z, but that is the whole idea where you embrace delivery of services digitally for health, for education, for fintech, for agri, and whatever you call it. And then the gender gap, when you leverage technology, you actually bridge the gender gap, because then you have the diversity, equality, and inclusion. And women more than ever will benefit when they leverage technology, because they are so used to doing, those who are not in the workforce, I'm talking about the women who are left behind, as the whole topic is including women in 4IR, is those women who leverage technology will actually help with diversity and equality and inclusion. The other important part is the partnership that needs to happen to accelerate digital transformation. What we see that in countries where we are still in a nascent stage where technology really has not transcended everything else. There is a partnership that needs to happen between the academia, the industry, and the government. The industry, or the private sector, always moves very fast because they are business people. They know how to source the best people. They are global. They move forward. The two that actually are a little bit lagging are academia and the government. And from academia perspective, I'll give you a very small example of some women software engineers from our part of the world who went and got these computer science degrees, and they wanted to be computer programmers and get outsourced work globally. One of the challenges that they faced was after they graduated, they sure enough had a computer science degree, but they were not able to compete successfully or bid successfully for outsourced jobs, even as a freelancer, where a freelancer just could sit on Udemy and just do bid for something. Then we found out, we did a research and found out that this was happening in lots of Asian countries and even in African countries. And the reason was that they were given an educational degree, but that degree was so focused on academia that it really did not teach them the latest coding techniques. It did not teach them how to write your code, a 20-line code to a 5-line code. Everything is changing. There are new tricks, new languages coming. And one of the reasons this happened is because in our part of the world, the emerging markets, there is no research and development facility in the university. So it's 100% academia. And when you don't let people explore and embrace new technology and learn new techniques, they actually get a raw deal when it comes to getting into the job force. So we see that academia is holding back, and we need that partnership with industry to push academia and also to get global and get a lot of people interested. And government also, in traditional industries like in the emerging markets, the government still today, everything is on paper. Nothing is actually digitized. So you imagine how tedious that is when you have countries still shuffling papers to understand how they will manage the country better, when the world has moved forward with big data, with machine learning, with artificial intelligence, where you can give a lot of data and that can be simulated to many situations, and all you have to do is make a decision. So these are the things that need to happen if you say that there has to be inclusive recovery, include women in 4IR. Please feel free to drop questions because I will have time at the end to address them as we move. Another important point, that this is a debate that we fight for, and every time we go, that we actually really think that the fourth industrial revolution will increase the size of the pie, and it shifts the pendulum. So it is a very conscious decision. It is a conscious choice people will have to make to get more people and include more women. 50% of the population being left behind can never give you a world that would be at optimal performance. So that women need to be included to adapt to the imminent wave of the changes that the 4IR brings. Which brings us to the second polling question. And I'm sure everybody can read that. So if we can have the poll up, thank you.
So Sonia, when I had the privilege of looking at this question before, and I was actually expecting the same answers, but I just don't want to, we have about 190.
I cannot tell you how happy I am with these answers. This is absolutely beautiful.
And I usually don't chime in during presentations, but I had a sidebar conversation with Sonia before. She actually appreciates Q&As and she wants to make it as interactive as possible. So I just wanted to chime in and say, if you have any questions or anything like that, please put it on the chat so that she can answer.
I think we've got pretty much, yeah, the answers. So let me close this. So thank you very much. I really think it does need to be introduced in the elementary and middle school curriculum. And I'll give you another example of what happens in emerging markets, because the United States it's a really great academia that it allows you to study sciences even if you have not had science subjects in your high school. So in most of the countries in the world, we have the traditional high school, and we have a exam on the 10th grade and then the high school. These are both public exams which the students have to take. And the rule is, and Sarah, you know this from Bangladesh's perspective and other Asian countries, that if you have studied science subjects for 10th grade and 12th grade, and then only then can you continue to study to be a doctor or a computer scientist or an engineer. So if somebody has had no science subjects, maybe has only math and and economics and business and history and geography, they will never ever be able to study computer science or become a doctor in the emerging countries, because the academia is such that you have to have a science background in your high school. That kind of restricts a lot of students from ever chasing their dreams. I'm an example. When I was in high school, when Sarah was there, when we were in high school, I did not study the sciences. I had math and I had other subjects like economics, history, and geography. But then I moved to Silicon Valley, and Silicon Valley being the valley, it was very encouraging for me to actually embrace sciences, and I ended up getting a Bachelor of Science degree. It was only, I did have to take a few more electives, but the choice was given to me that yes, if I choose to study, if I choose to be a math major, I can be, but I just have to take more electives. So that was there. So that's why I think it's very important, for another reason besides what most of you have said, that it needs to be introduced at elementary school. The other reason is encouraging women and girls to study STEM from elementary school actually gives them, in parts of the emerging world, it gets them on track to continue being in the sciences. And the other thing is, for globally, if they are given this, the passion for technology, then they are not averse, they are not scared, because I know most people are scared. Whenever we talk to people, mostly girls are scared of maths and physics, and I think it's just it's a conceptual thing. So if we introduce it at a very early age, then that fear factor goes away, and then they are able to they are able to embrace what is happening. So now into the meat of the discussion is, these are some proposed guidelines for how do we include women in this fourth industrial revolution. And one that you've already answered very well, very accurately, is that it has to happen early. It has to happen in the early years, in the formative years, where they develop, they actually have a passion for it. Women are, and I don't want to read because you can see it, but just to highlight some of the points, that they are really underrepresented in fields that are experiencing job growth. We all know globally there's going to be a shortage of software programmers. Globally there will, because everything is going to be dictated by technology. We are moving towards that world, and we don't have enough people who want to be coders, and we have a lot of women who are left behind. So there is an opportunity for women, a huge opportunity, that if they choose to embrace a tech career, they will actually be in a field that will experience phenomenal growth. The other thing is that, the gender stereotype that happens. It is always assumed that a woman will not be a electrical engineer. And I may be a little bit biased towards the Asian culture, because that's where what I'm representing today, and I'm speaking to. I know I lived 20 years in Silicon Valley. I'm sure there is much better acceptance, and there's more less stereotyping in Silicon Valley or in the United States. But overall, if you look at globally, there is a gender stereotyping. So investing in STEM will break that, and it will not only encourage girls, it will also teach men to accept women at an early age, and saying that yes, we co-share this field with them. The second point is actually the same. It leads to the third point leads to the second point of the perception, right? The perception has to change, and it's not just about being included, but it's also about being a leader. You know, women, it's to have leadership positions. When I was given the role for running Microsoft for a few countries in Southeast Asia, it was a little difficult for people in these countries that I was the managing director for. It was Bangladesh, Myanmar, Nepal, Bhutan, and Laos. You probably haven't even heard of these countries, but these are countries that are very, very male dominated. So for them to see a woman heading a tech company was very difficult. So to change that perception, it was not easy. And that's why we're saying that you need to empower women as leaders to show that yes, we can do it, because sometimes just being a part of being a team player versus being a leader has its differences. When you're a leader, you've got some 007 rights that you can exercise to show some powers that you cannot if you're a team player. So that's why we say that it's important for women to break the stereotype, the perception, come in and then become a leader. The fourth point is it just brings in the same point, the replication of stereotypes and inequalities. And when I talk to, what we do is in Asian countries, what we do a lot is go and talk to girls in elementary school. And we tell them that, you know, I'll give you an example. If you want to be playing a game, you've got to be in the team. You cannot be a spectator, because when you're a spectator, you neither win nor do you lose, you just watch. But when you're in the game, you are actually playing the game. So embrace science's study. It will be difficult. You may fall, you may fail, but don't give up. You know, give up on giving up and stay the course. You will succeed. So these are the kind of messages when we like to give when we say, how do you include women? It's like start at an early age, go and encourage them. And then we do a lot of things. I do something called the externship, where they come and spend a day with me. Internship is much longer. Externship is 1 day. And then they just see what I do as a tech person, and then see that, well, that was really not that difficult, because the perception is sometimes much different than reality. So working on early investment in girls is a very important guideline for including women. And this is, I spoke about that it's important to show up, right? If you don't show up, you will neither win nor will you lose. And it seems like when we look at all the jobs that women have, there's an industry-wide survey done and said that women mostly are involved in work that is very repetitive. And those are the kind of work that has high risk of being displaced by technology. So as we move into the 4th industrial revolution, it is going to be challenging for the jobs that are more mundane, and it is going to be displaced very easily. So we need to protect those women, get them into more digital literacy sessions, and get them to show up in the digital field. Another thing that is advantageous for women is that I think naturally women are creative, and they are, you know, the human talent. If we can tap onto that talent, as opposed to saying that you need to have masculine skill sets. So women need to be encouraged. They need to show up, and then also say tap into their creativity and skills and ingenuity, as opposed to saying you need to do this like a man, because you actually do not. They are not role models. We shouldn't believe in stereotypes. We should not accept it. We should deny it, we should defy it, and we should say, women, come and bring your creativity. And in order to do that, you need the courage from within. That's the courage that we want to work on, that in order to show up, in order to raise your hand and say, yes, I want to do it. Yes, I want to explore, I want to embrace, requires a lot of courage. And it's something that I share a lot when I speak. It's called the 5 C's. So first thing is courage. You must be courageous. And second thing is, if you have courage, you have the ability to challenge. And the 3rd C is then when you challenge, you can change. But all of this requires a 4th C, which is curious. You must be curious. If you inculcate a sense of curiosity in you, the 4th industrial revolution is going to open many doors, because when you ask questions, you solve problems that have not been solved, and you leverage technology, you are ready to change the world. So that's on showing up. So be courageous, be challenge and change status quo, be curious, and you see how the world changes. And the last C is compassion, empathy, or it's like feel for what is happening. And this is something I talk to the developed world. Whenever I speak with the developed world, it's like, please have some compassion when you think of the emerging countries or the least developed countries, because you will, if you can feel their problem and their pain, there's so many problems that can be solved today with technology, that anybody who latches onto it with true sincerity and technology will actually be able to make a difference. So the second point of guideline is that women need to show up. You can take a horse to the water, but you can't make it drink, right? So it has to come from within the women. We can talk a lot, we can give encouraging pep talks, but women need to show up. Another point that that we are seeing that is very important is allowing women, empowering women, and it's all about digital literacy. If you empower women and you have programs just for women for STEM and for economic participation worldwide increases, women are very, very ready to take challenges, but they need to be handled with a little bit of care. So the governments and leaders and policymakers need to have special programs for women. Women are not yet ready to be put in a room with men and say, may the best man or may the best woman win, because we are not included. In an inclusive world, we can have that competition. But in order to draw women in, I think it should be she for she, and where each woman works to bring each woman up, and then and get to a level, get at par with men, where then the economic you compete. But right now it's important to just have everybody make them aware of the urgent need to empower women and increase their economic participation through technology. This point is Accenture had done a report, is about being digitally fluent, or we can talk about digital literacy. If you look at the statistics, 2040, gender equality in developed countries, and 2060 in developing countries. That's actually a very, it's a sobering statistics, because we're saying 20 years from now and 40 years from now. And that seems like, that seems like a very, very long time. And I think when Accenture predicted that, I know when the Accenture predicted that we did not have COVID-19. COVID-19 has done one thing that has been very favorable for tech companies. If you look at all the top tech companies and see how their stock is performing, look at Zoom, look at Microsoft Teams, all of us, even this session today, we were supposed to have it in person in DC. We're logging in from our homes, from different parts of the world, and that has been possible because of technology. So the digital acceleration that has happened has forced digital literacy, has forced to digital fluency, because we all have been asked to look at these ways of doing business, which we didn't do. The delivery of today's session is being a very strong example. We have a polling question here before we move on. This is interesting. It's a fight going on between a yes and a no. I'm sure hoping that wow, it's almost neck and neck. Anyone who has not voted want to tip this a little bit more, although 51% say yes. Okay, I think we've got all the votes in. So, well, 52, 51, we go back and forth. Well, but thank you for that. It is tough, I understand, because we don't really know, but at least majority think that we can predict how the digital transformation will shape the future jobs for women. Let's discuss that, yes. we feel that there's this concept that has taken a lot of traction in globally, and which is the MSMEs, or the micro, small, medium entrepreneurs. These are not the big tycoons. These are not the women, the people who do business on a very small scale. Not the, these are the people who, the MSMEs, are coming up, and they're realizing that business can be done. The new digital landscape actually provides them the flexibility to start businesses with smaller investment amounts and have access to markets globally. So with the era of the digital era, right, the internet coming in place, the Facebook commerce coming in place, there's the apps that are coming in place, technology being an enabler, allowing people to use technology to run their businesses, is now, it is a very fertile land now for women to come in and plant their seeds. So the new digital landscape actually provides a lot of flexibility, which we think that women need to be encouraged to explore. And we also need, we need the ecosystem. The ecosystem is very important because the camaraderie, the recognition, the reward, the pillar of support that needs, it's again a she for she movement, which we need to be there and say that yes, we will help these women as they build the ecosystem. The ecosystem, a lot of it has to do with what we spoke about a little earlier, was equal access to internet, electricity, and digital ID. These are important, but then the ecosystem also has to be built to inspire women, and that's something that we see a lot of the emerging countries are doing. That we're saying that equal opportunity employment exists in the United States. In our country, we in our part of the world, we're looking at that, but there's a lot of benefits being given from the banking sector, benefits being given from education and academia, so saying that there is scope for women specifically to come and leverage this, and where they don't really have to compete with men. So that kind of, it's a pull versus and a push, right? So first we really need to pull them in. We pull all the women in, get them to a level playing field, and then we push them and say, go get them. That's what we really need to do. I just wanted to highlight, share a few things about what's happening in the part of the world that probably you are not very familiar with, right? Poverty being a very, very big challenge that they have faced is now being addressed. We are seeing a lot of least developed countries graduating from a LDC, which is a least developed country, to a middle income economy, which means that the GDP of the country is increasing, and the purchasing power of the people is increasing. So the prospects for millions of people is infinite. And then we are also seeing the digital equality, right, to benefit. How can we give that to women and men, of course, but this is more focusing on women. It does benefit men too as well. So the men listening in, please don't feel left out. Another thing is we need to allow women leaders. I come from a country, in my country, we have a female prime minister, the opposition leader is a female, the speaker of the house is female. So we can boast of, we really can boast of women empowerment in this country. And so it's important to let women know that they can be the next generation of leaders, and specifically in technology, because it's a very male dominated field. We can have women leaders in banking, in medicine, in education, but we really need to have women leaders in technology, because that is how we will be role models, and we will tell the other women coming up, the girls coming up, that they can do it. Same situation, that the gender discrimination and the dangers, we need to address that. And the last point here is about harassment, discrimination, and violence. We need to have policies put in there, because as we encourage more and more women to come out, and do things that they have never done before. We're responsible. The governments need to ensure that when you are asking them to come out, they also have to protect them and they are not victims. We need them to be warriors, not victims. I'm coming towards the end of the presentation, and I would really encourage some Q&A so we can talk about that. I think this is just summarizing that we need to empower the girls with the tools and skills they need. And this is a favorite quotation I use all the time, is that we need women to have a maverick mindset, and those who dare to cross the chasm with a maverick mindset, because that's the need of the hour. We need to be fearless. We need to look at fear in the eye and say, get out of my way, I've got things to do, because that's what it's going to take. And the other point is that we should not think that men are taking away our jobs. Yes, I've talked about gender gap, but at the end of the day, it is human beings that are dividing us. It is not technology. And if you think about it, human beings, we've divided ourselves before. If you go back in history, before technology was even to be blamed. So we cannot say that the 4IR is dividing us. It is us that is dividing us, and we need to unite men and women to fight against automation. What is technology? It really is just a reflection of us. It is neither a divider nor is it an equalizer. It follows the instructions given by us. If you really think about what technology does, it doesn't start on its own. We program it, we tell it what to do. We meaning us, you, me, women and men. So technology is not a divider. We may have more men in the field now, but it is definitely time that we wake up and say, carpe diem, or seize the day. Women need to take charge. This is one message that if you don't remember anything from this slide, that this is a very important message, that inclusion of women is a joint responsibility with men, and exclusion has joint risks, because we will risk the human population if we do not unite against technology, if we do not unite against automation, if we do not unite, then we will lose. And this is just, again, the same point, but showing that, 50% of the population is women. So, you cannot ignore what's going to happen if we leave them. And I think I have a few more minutes. This is just the end of the presentation. If I may just go back to the chat, if there are questions.
So Sonia, what I'm actually looking at is some discussions. So I don't know where to start. I think those were all the questions that or discussions that were happening during the presentation.
Is there if there's any questions? I know we have a couple minutes. Anything anybody wants to say? Anybody disagrees or agrees with me? I see people mostly agree. Thank you very much for your kind comments. But
so I will start off. I always think that technology is actually a great equalizer. So whatever the differences are between men and women, or even for the different economies that you were alluding to, like developing countries and the developing countries. I think technology has brought in a lot of equalizing power to that, because whenever I go to different parts of the world, one constant is like, I take my cell phone, it works.
Right.
So, that is one little piece of technology that I carry everywhere, and I see that I'm not the only one carrying it. So if you want to add something to that, while other people may be interested in adding some more.
I just read a comment, but I think one of the things that is a takeaway is somebody actually did comment that I think Amity Collars, I liked her comment where she said having a small group support that actually helps, because she encouraging women and discussing our fears and facing our fears, turning, be from victim to warrior. So we need to be there for each other. I'm always available, and I've given my email address. You can email me, you can WhatsApp me. I'd love to be part of, this is my passion. So it's very important for me to work with people who have different perspectives, because I'm sitting in Asia. So Sarah, I'm not sure if Isika does that, or
what I will do, what we are actually going to do is all these presentations would be PDF'd, and then it will be available. And also I will encourage everyone to go to LinkedIn, because I know all our speakers are very much involved in LinkedIn. So reach out to them, and maybe that would be a good source.
Sure. So I think I'm on LinkedIn. Somebody said they could not copy my email address. I will just give it here in the chat really quick. My Gmail is really easy, soniakabir@gmail.com. And I'm on LinkedIn. So please feel free to find me, and I'll be this is my passion. So I am willing to give as much time as it takes to say, spearhead women and bring more women into technology, and go get them, guys. So thank you very, very much. We have 4 minutes, Sarah. I think we end at 10:50, right?
Yeah, but I don't see any questions, but you're getting a lot of, I knew all our speakers are great, so I'm grateful that you appreciate what I actually appreciated from all these speakers that I've heard before. I don't see any other questions. So what I'll do is I'll just take a few minutes to thank Sonia for her presentation. And I know it's late, past your bedtime, probably, and past dinner time at least. So thank you very much. And looking at all the comments that I've received, I'm looking at, it looks like everybody enjoyed your presentation, which I knew they would. And actually, for me, this is a great thing, because we started 5 years ago. This is our 5th year doing this session, and we have the participation has been exponential. We started off 5 years ago. We had a half a day session, 40 people participated, and we were talking about fearlessness. There were only 3 men who attended. And I don't know today if any of them are present here or not, but definitely we have made huge progress. And, I look at things half full. So yeah, I understand COVID has had a huge impact in our daily lives. But the thing is, I'm actually looking at right now, we have about 206 participants. So it's a great turnout, and I'd like to look at it as a positive, but really, next year, we definitely want to have an in-person, because as women, we know networking is a huge thing. And what we usually have with these sessions is that after the day-long presentations and networking, we actually have a formal networking event where people can talk, one-on-one. So I really think that's a great opportunity.